John, you're with us again, together with Gurv Singh and Phil Reid.
So I think Phil's had to depart, so we do have Gurv Singh and Ruth Andrews, two of the planners who have been working on this plan change that we touched on earlier to correct some of the errors and anomalies in the unitary plan. And as part of that exercise, we have identified that the schedule of trees, notable trees in the unitary plan, really needs its own separate plan change. So with the benefit of the plan having been operative in part since last November, and in fact it came into force, some parts of it right back when the plan was notified, other parts came into force when the council made decisions in August, then we had operative in part in November. There has been some time now to get some feedback from those using the plan, our consents colleagues in the Resource Consents Department, applicants, members of the public, our own team in the Plans and Places Department, looking for some of those potential errors. As Phil Reid mentioned previously, some we can correct without any major formality through Clause 20 of the RMA, but those tend to be typos, grammatical errors, those sorts of things. Anything more significant would require a plan change. So we are seeking the committee's endorsement to pull together a plan change to deal with those errors and anomalies, and a separate plan change to deal with the tree schedule, because it really needs its own specific attention, and we would bring that plan change back to the committee before putting it out for submissions. Some of the errors and anomalies do relate to recommendations from the hearings panel, where the panel recommended something in their reports, but the provisions in the unitary plan don't seem to clearly reflect what the panel had said. There are a few in that category, so we'd also be picking up on some of those sorts of issues, particularly where the council and the submitters had all agreed in mediation, and the panel would appear to have agreed, but the provisions are not reflecting that. There aren't a huge number of those, but just making you aware that those also would be corrected through this plan change. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, John. Questions, members? Do I have a mover for the motions? I'll take questions in a minute.
It was a question.
Question. I'll put it on the table, though. I'll move it then. Do I have a second? Councillor Philippina, thank you. And Mayor Goff.
Yeah, it's just on the notable trees schedule. You've set out in section 22 some of the misinformation, but two questions. One, is there an intention to try to expand the schedule of notable trees, and can you give us an idea of what the scale is now and what you think it might be afterwards? And secondly, can you give us an idea of the time frame under which you'll be addressing this and the sort of public input that there might be into it?
So yes, I can answer those through you, Mr. Chair. So in terms of the new nominations for additional trees to the schedule, that's not anticipated as part of this particular proposed plan change. So there are some nominations that we've received since the hearings, but that really would require a plan change with an entirely different focus. So this particular plan change would just be focused on fixing up the schedule. So from very minor errors that we've identified through to more significant errors, that's what the focus will be. And in terms of the time frame, probably between 12 to 18 months with some flexibility around that. We haven't developed the criteria yet, we're still working on that right now, but 12 to 18 months seems to be a reasonable time frame.
Okay, can I just ask a supplementary to that, Mr. Chairman? So this is solely about errors, so it's not going to be hugely significant in that regard, but given the changes that have been made in central government through resource management and other legislation, there's a mood in the community that there are a lot of trees that might merit protection but aren't included in it, and you have to be specific rather than the blanket coverage. Nobody thinks there should be blanket coverage again. Is it on your work program at all to look at how you might have a more relevant and somewhat more comprehensive schedule of notable trees?
Yes, I think John may want to add to this, but I think that certainly with some of the nominations that are coming through, we would certainly consider additional ones, and also maybe with a future plan change look at a more comprehensive way of identifying new trees. Certainly, yes, that's something that's definitely on the work program, but time-wise, I can't give an answer to that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Can I just follow up on that? Thanks for Meg Goff highlighting that, because I read that paragraph as well, and I was a little bit confused, because the paragraph does read recommend a comprehensive review of the schedule, and that interested me. I had a chat with Councillor Penny Hulse, and there's a bit of an overlap between Environment and Community Committee and our own committee here, the Planning Committee, and I think I did check in with John. There is quite a lot on the work program, but I'm also of a mind, considering the legislative changes and there's a decimation of our tree canopy happening out there at the moment, whether the committee would actually like to maybe make an additional recommendation here supporting the staff embarking, subject to prioritisation, because there is quite a bit of work in that area, a more comprehensive review than addressing errors. I might...
Happy to move along those lines.
Don't want to put you on the spot here, Councillor Hulse, but do you have something to add in this area?
I concur with your, the points that you make. And thank you, Chris pointed out and he said you might want to have a little look at this and see what else you'd like to add. I can't think of anything wise or fabulous to add, apart from if there are opportunities for us to do a little bit more in this area, let's look at it. If you've got some words you want to add up there, I'm happy to support them.
It did come from Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, well, I'd move along the lines that you've suggested, Mr. Chairman. You do the drafting, I'll do the moving.
We'll do the drafting very quickly. I tell you what, we'll leave this item and we'll just do some drafting, and we'll carry on with another item because you're on that as well. John?
Are we allowed to ask any more questions, or are you just going to stop it and go and do something else?
The questions have popped up now. Councillor Wayne Walker?
Sure. Just further to this, and it goes to monitoring. Have we got any active monitoring occurring on the loss of tree cover across Auckland?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I can't answer that off the top of my head. We'd have to go to our research colleagues in Remu, unless the team here have any insights in terms of monitoring of tree loss.
Probably not more than that, but I am aware of a program that is underway at the moment with Remu, but I can't give you any further information.
Can I help for a second, seeing I monumentally failed in my last task? And this is where the two kind of come together, the monitoring of tree covering. We've got an item coming back, Councillor, to the Environment Committee on the urban tree strategy and trying to bring together all the strands of the Mayor's Million Trees, urban tree coverage, all of those issues together into one big discussion paper. So watch out for that, hopefully in June.
Thank you. Councillor Cooper.
Thank you. There was a couple of questions. One was, can you please just remind me, in terms of scheduling of trees, can that be done on private property by anyone other than the owner? Under the law?
Mr. Chair, going back to the previous report on private plan changes in that diagram, anyone can apply for a change to the unitary plan, and they can apply to impose a restriction, including the scheduling of a tree on a private property. So there's nothing in the RMA to prevent that. Certainly if the proponent of the plan change has engaged with the landowner, that would be of considerable benefit in terms of getting the plan change through the process. But no, there's nothing to strictly prevent them from applying to change the unitary plan. Council could reject that plan change, or accept it, or adopt it, as we talked about before.
Yeah. So the other question was, through you, Mr. Chairman, around this possible addition to this resolution that's being developed here, because I'm not quite sure what's in it, but if you were to go through a comprehensive view of, how we deal with trees, you'd still have to work within the law, wouldn't you? So if you came back and said, well, actually we can't go any further with this, we've gone as far as we can, because I wouldn't want to see a huge amount of work done and then we can't do anything about it. That's just in terms of your work plan, resources, etc., where we're trying to limit that. I suppose I just wanted your comment on that.
Okay.
So,
John,
well, Mr. Chair, it really comes back to that first work programme item we kicked off with when we brought item 19 on the agenda forward. we did discuss a future work program for the council around plan changes. There were some 3 or 4 in there, including Whanuapai, this plan change, the sites of significance to Mana Whenua, and a confidential item. And then we foreshadowed a few other items. We didn't foreshadow any work on the tree schedule, but the team have been giving some thought to that because we have the nominations. So it really comes down to prioritisation and resources. So in terms of that item, we were going to report back to committee with a sort of 2 to 3 year program of plan changes. So we'll take this away and come back to you for your direction in terms of what the prioritisation should be. Doing a tree schedule plan change for the whole of the region is potentially a big piece of work, because trees are, you know, a very emotive thing. We do get many nominations. If we put out a plan change, we'll get many submissions. That's not to say it's a bad idea. It's potentially a very good idea, but it would come with quite a big resource impact. So when we look at all of the other potential plan changes for heritage buildings, character areas, these sorts of plan changes that are being endorsed today, we'd have to sort of figure out, well, what can we do within what time frame?
And also, sorry, through you, Mr Chairman, what I'm getting is, so anything we do will be subservient to the current law. So if we can't impose conditions on people's private property other than a district plan change on vegetation on someone's property, like a schedule.
Well, essentially with the changes to the RMA, it either has to be a specifically identified tree on a specific property with the location pinpointed,
That's what I'm saying.
description
So
of
we
the tree,
can't do blanket
or we can use
stuff
significant
on private property.
ecological areas and use regional planning rules, but the old general tree protection is gone, so we couldn't go down that path. That's absolutely right.
That's what I wanted to know.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Clow.
I actually want to see the next resolution and comment on it.
We'll just before it goes up, I just need to look at it myself, so can I have... Not quite there at the moment. Do you have a question outside you'd like to see that one?
Could I, well, just while we're waiting, if I can ask a question about how many trees have you got scheduled at the moment, and what is the criteria that you generally follow in scheduling a tree as a notable tree?
Through you, Mr Chair, there's approximately just a shade short of 3,000 sites with notable trees on them at the present time, but I would note that of those 3,000 sites, there could be multiple trees, so that includes groves of trees and so forth. So, for example, Cornwall Park would be a good example of that, with a number of groves of trees. And the criteria, a numerous criteria, and off the top of my head, I can't sort of talk about them in detail, but certainly issues of botanical significance, cultural significance, along those lines. And we do have a form on the website which goes through a number of criteria that you'd need to meet.
So you've got a template, but obviously only a small percentage of the trees that might meet that template have been notified as notable trees.
Yes, that's right.
So the challenge in front of you, to go back to some of the other councillors' remarks, is that this could be a very big exercise, so we'd need to prioritise it within all of the other demands that we make on you.
Yes.
Okay, members, we've got the E there. It's very clear that it's asking staff to investigate a comprehensive review. It is not suggesting this jumps ahead of anything else in the queue of the planning work. That will be brought back to us, and as will the timeframes also be brought back to us, and there will be a tie-in here with the Environment and Community Committee report that's coming up. Councillor Clow.
There is a way of getting this going quickly and initially, and not a lot of staff cost, is by involving the local boards who clearly know trees in their areas that have been missed or should be prioritised. So I don't really want to put local boards in there, but report back on methodology, prioritisation and timeframes. And I'm just signalling a good start and a way of doing it fairly cost effectively. Is just request local boards to come back and identify trees in the area, because that will just get you going and it won't cost you a lot of money to do that at all, and then you can investigate their priorities. And generally they do know. So.
Yeah, good idea.
Good idea.
John, can I just check?
So I'm
with you on
suggesting
that?
putting methodology
Is
in there.
that just jumping ahead of it a little bit? I understand entirely where you're coming from. Can you give us an idea of what we're looking at in our planning work? Because Because at the moment, we don't know where this sits in the prioritisation list.
So as part of doing analysis on prioritisation and timeframes, we would have to develop up a methodology to report that back to you. So I think that's covered by that added resolution there, that in coming back to you with where it might sit in the overall priority for you to give us a decision on that, we'd have to do some work on what is the methodology. And it's a fairly tried and tested piece of work. We've had a number of our staff involved in adding trees to schedules in the past under the unitary plan and in the legacy councils, so we could do that quite easily. And yes, we would definitely tap into local boards once we get the go-ahead from the committee, if that happened.
Happy with that, councillor?
Yeah.
Yep.
Thank you.
I'm happy to move that in the way that it's been explained, Mr Chairman. I just endorse Councillor Clowe's view that the local boards are close to the ground. They would be able to report back. There's a limit to there's no limit to what you could do, but there's a limit to what you're able to do. But just getting some of the most significant trees protected in that way, I think, would be welcomed by the wider community.
I agree with that.
I'll move accordingly, Mr Chairman.
Thank you. It's moved by Mayor Phil Goff and seconded by Councillor Philippina. That's A to E, and I have Councillor Stewart, then Member Namani.
Oh, thank you. I just want to just remind everybody, back in Manukau, we actually had somebody that lived on the North Shore that drove around Howick, and they decided there were over 1,000, or it could have even been 2,000 notable trees, and it became a bit of a problem, so we just have to be a little bit mindful of that. And one of the trees that they decided was the most protected and notable tree was a gum tree that, anyway, on a private property that's caused nothing but problems, and anyway, the house has been, anyway, thank you. So I think we just have to be a little bit careful of that.
The local board could be a good filter for that, yeah.
Thank you. Member Namani, and Councillor Cooper.
Happy with the resolutions. One thing I just note that there has been an emphasis on going to local boards. They know the local knowledge about trees. I'd bring to your attention, if that was an approach that was taken, that you would have to include mana whenua, because they too have mātauranga Māori, local Māori knowledge on the trees of significance to them.
Thank you.
That's good.
Councillor Cooper?
Can I just ask a question of the staff, because I wasn't in council when you drafted up the draft PORP or the proposed unitary plan, so I don't know the process you used to actually scour the earth for the kind of trees you wanted to be part of, to be scheduled, etc. I'm just wondering, we've just done a whole unitary plan process, and now we're going to go and ask all the local boards and mana whenua and anybody else that wants to go around the whole region. Let's look for more trees. I'm just wondering how that fits in the process that we've just done. It seems like a major piece of work, and straight on the back of adopting the unitary plan, where this didn't seem to be a major issue. I'm just a little bit surprised that we'd be going all out like this. I can understand when we've got applications, absolutely, but this is a major piece of work. It's almost like starting again in this part of the unitary plan. Can someone just comment on that?
So, Mr Chair, members of the committee, the approach we took with the unitary plan was to roll over into the unitary plan all of the scheduled trees from the legacy 7 district plans. North Shore City Council had embarked on a scheduled tree plan change, a full comprehensive review prior to amalgamation, and I think that was still possibly tracking through the appeals process, but we did roll those into the unitary plan as well. So North Shore had done that review, had added to it, so that's all by and large in the unitary plan now, but it was acknowledged at that time that we didn't have the time to do a from zero base, build up the schedules from scratch and do that comprehensive review. So it was always a potential future piece of work for this council to undertake.
Yeah, so just, if you don't mind, Mr Chairman, so for me, I mean, absolutely, if it's a piece of work that needs to be done eventually, but I was under the understanding that we were going to kind of limit the amount of work we did so that we could bed in what we had. We've just passed some other issues around, well, this particular item is, let's look at any anomalies, let's sort of tidy up the edges, but at this early stage, within 6 months to embark on a major piece of work, I'm a little bit astounded, given that our staff are really already trying to embed through the consenting processes and everything, how do we make this, what we've got, work? I'm just a little bit surprised, and it's not the concept of the tree, that's not that, it's actually doing a major piece of work like that, and it's only, 6 months since we adopted the plan, and we kind of kept saying to ourselves was like, we'll do this, and we'll let it rest and see how it works. So I am I'm not highly in favour of this, because I think it will cost us a huge amount of money, and we've got a whole lot of constraints. So
Okay.
that's just my view. I want that to be heard, that's all.
Okay, so firstly, we're asking the staff to investigate. We're not embarking on a big plan change here
You will.
at this stage.
Yeah.
We're
You will.
asking for, wait on, councillor, I've listened to you, and if you could take some silence and listen to the rest of us. The point that we are making here is I'm hearing from quite a few members, I've heard this from a number of members, of concern about some legislative changes and the reduction in the tree canopies across Auckland. I've heard that from a lot of people. It's been highlighted here. Mayor Goff's talked about it on the campaign trail. It's out there, and I think it's had good resonance. It is an instruction to the staff to investigate. We're not saying where this is in the prioritisation list at this time. It'll come back, and it'll be up to us to decide whether it sits at 1 or 20. I can't recall how many are on that list. So at this stage, we're not spending any monies other than
Staff time.
our internal budgets to investigate this proposed move. That's all we're doing. So it is moved by Mayor Goff. It's seconded by Councillor Filipaina. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Contrary, no. Declare that carried.